Rain drummed endlessly against the tin roof, each drop a reminder of time slipping away. The workshop smelled of rust, oil, and wet earth. Water seeped through the cracks and gathered in small puddles on the concrete floor. Arjun sat hunched over his cluttered wooden table, tracing numbers with the tip of his pen as if by staring hard enough he could make the red ink turn black. The ledger pages were wrinkled, the corners stained from months of greasy fingers and spilled tea. The numbers didn't lie, he was broke, again. He rubbed his temples, feeling the exhaustion settle behind his eyes. His hands were rough and calloused, each scar a story of burned metal or a blade that slipped. Years ago, when he'd first opened the workshop, he had imagined it would be a symbol of pride. Back then, the smell of grease had meant possibility, not defeat. The machines around him had been alive, humming with work. Now they sat silent, cold, covered in layers of dust. The rain outside intensified, and a gust of wind rattled the tin sheets overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, then fell silent. Arjun exhaled heavily. He looked toward the small cot in the corner where he sometimes slept when the day's fatigue won over the walk home. Above it, pinned to the wall, was a faded photograph of his family, Meera, with her gentle eyes and tired smile, little Neha, clutching her doll, and Ravi, his 10-year-old son, grinning with 2 missing teeth. Arjun's throat tightened as he looked at the picture. He wondered what they were eating tonight, or if Meera had managed to stretch the rice and lentils another day. He closed the ledger and leaned back in his chair. The wood creaked under his weight, threatening to break just like everything else in his life. For a long moment, he just stared at the ceiling, watching the raindrops slide down the metal. He had once believed in luck. When he first opened the workshop, he used to dream of big government contracts, of sudden windfalls that would change everything. He'd spent money he didn't have to buy new machines, convinced that success was only one lucky customer away. That customer never came. What came instead were debts, one after another, until even the local hardware supplier stopped giving him materials on credit. Money doesn't grow by luck, son. It grows when you plant effort every single day. His father's voice echoed in his head. He could almost see the old man sitting in the corner of the shop, polishing tools with slow, steady hands. His father had died believing that honest labor could overcome anything. But the world had changed. Hard work wasn't enough anymore, at least, that's what Arjun had begun to tell himself. The bulb above him flickered again, casting long, trembling shadows across the floor. He was about to stand and close up for the night when a knock echoed on the metal door. The sound startled him. It was late, far too late for customers. He hesitated, then wiped his hands on his shirt and pulled the door open. Standing there was a young man drenched from the rain, clutching a small wrapped package. His face was familiar. Ravi, Arjun said, blinking in surprise. The young man smiled shyly. Yes, sir. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. Come in before you catch your death. Ravi stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor. He looked around the shop, his eyes shining with nostalgia. It hasn't changed much, he said. Same smell, same tools. I used to love this place. Arjun smiled faintly. You were one of my best apprentices. I still remember how you welded your first joint, crooked, but strong. Ravi laughed. You told me it looked like a drunk spider had done it. They both chuckled, and for a moment, the tension lifted. Then Ravi held out the package. I wanted to give you this. Just a small thank you. You taught me more than anyone else. Arjun unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a new wrench set, shiny, solid, professional grade. He ran his fingers over the metal, speechless. I used that old design you showed me, the motor with the triple coil, Ravi continued. I built a prototype and showed it to the new factory manager. They hired me right away. I'm earning well now. That's good, Arjun said softly. I'm happy for you. But the words came out heavy, weighted with envy he didn't want to feel. They're expanding production, Ravi added hesitantly. They're looking for experienced mechanics, maybe even small suppliers for parts. You could join them, sir. Or sell them your motor designs. Arjun shook his head slowly. I'm too old to start again. Besides, people like me, we don't get lucky twice. Ravi looked at him for a long moment. With all respect, sir, you never needed luck. You just forgot what you already had. You taught me that effort doesn't end when things get hard, it begins there. The words hit deeper than Ravi could have known. Arjun looked away, embarrassed by the sting in his eyes. "You've grown wiser than your teacher," he said finally. Ravi smiled, gave a small nod, and left. When the door shut, the workshop felt even quieter than before. The rain had softened to a whisper, tapping gently on the roof. Arjun turned the wrench set over in his hands, watching the reflection of the bulb glint on the polished steel. "Never needed luck." The phrase echoed in his mind. He stood up and walked around the room, studying the machines that had once been his pride. Some were broken, some half-finished, but all were filled with potential he'd stopped seeing long ago. He reached for one of the old motors lying in the corner. It was small, heavy, and stubbornly silent. He turned it over, examining the rusted bolts, the worn coils. Maybe it could still run. Maybe it could be something more. He thought of the villages nearby, where power outages lasted for days, sometimes weeks. What if he could rebuild these motors into compact generators, cheap, efficient, reliable? His pulse quickened. It wasn't a plan yet, just a spark, but it was enough to make him feel alive again. He pulled his welding mask down and switched on the light. The bulb buzzed, steady and strong this time. As he began cutting through the metal, the old rhythm returned, the hum of tools, the crackle of heat, the scent of smoke and oil. His hands moved with memory and purpose. He wasn't chasing luck anymore. He was building something real. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Inside, the workshop glowed like a furnace of hope. Each spark that flew from his torch was a promise, to his family, to himself, that this time, he wouldn't wait for fortune to find him. He would make his own. And for the first time in months, Arjun didn't feel tired. He felt reborn. The morning sun poured through the open windows of the workshop, casting warm golden light across polished metal and humming machines. The place that had once smelled of dust and despair now breathed life and motion. Sparks danced from welding torches, and the rhythmic clatter of tools filled the air like music. Arjun stood in the middle of it all, wiping the sweat from his forehead, the corners of his mouth lifting into a quiet, satisfied smile. A year had changed everything. The same man who had once sat staring hopelessly at red ink in his ledger now oversaw a bustling business. Young men and women worked in coordinated rhythm, assembling small, sleek generators that carried his name, Arjun Power Solutions. The logo, painted proudly on each unit, symbolized not luck, but the power of resilience and persistence. "Sir, the last batch for the Northern District is ready," shouted one of the apprentices from across the floor. "Good. Pack them carefully," Arjun replied. "And make sure the seals are tight, we don't want them damaged in transport." He moved among the workers, inspecting each machine with the sharp eye of experience. Every gear, every bolt mattered. He believed that anything worth building should last longer than its maker. His team had learned that too. Many of them had once been unemployed youths from nearby villages, without education or confidence. Now they stood tall, earning, learning, and smiling. The transformation had started slow. At first, no one had believed in his generator idea. They laughed when he began piecing them together from junkyard scraps, calling it a poor man's dream. But when he sold his first prototype to a farmer and it powered an entire field irrigation system for 3 days straight, word began to spread. By the third month, he had orders from 3 villages. By the 6th, even small schools wanted his machines to keep the lights on for evening classes. As he watched his workers, Arjun felt something he hadn't in years: peace. Not because he had become rich, but because every day now meant progress. Every spark of metal was a step forward. The sound of a camera shutter made him turn. A young journalist stood near the entrance, notebook in hand, snapping photos. "Mr. Arjun," she called out politely. "I'm from the Daily Horizon. Could we have a few minutes for an interview?" He laughed softly. "An interview? With me? I'm just a mechanic, not a celebrity." "Maybe not," she said, smiling, "but people are talking about you. They say you're the luckiest man in town. We wanted to know your secret." The word, luck, made him chuckle again, this time deeper, more thoughtful. He motioned for her to follow him to a quieter corner of the workshop. They sat on 2 stools beside a large table stacked with blueprints and invoices. "Luck," he said slowly, looking at the spinning fan above them. "That's what they always say when they don't see the work behind the results." The journalist tilted her head. "Then how did it all begin? Was there a moment when things finally turned around?" Arjun leaned back, remembering that night of rain and rust. There wasn't one moment. There was a decision. I was sitting here, broke, ready to close this place for good. Then a young man I once taught came by, Ravi. He reminded me of what I'd forgotten. That effort never stops, it only changes direction. That night, I picked up my tools again. He paused, his gaze drifting toward the window where sunlight spilled over a row of gleaming generators. That's when I realized, money doesn't grow by luck. It grows by labor, faith, and the courage to start again. The journalist scribbled notes furiously. That's powerful, she said. What motivates you now? Arjun smiled. It used to be survival. Now, it's something bigger. Every machine we make lights a home that used to be dark. Every young worker here sends money back to their family. I may not have become rich, but I've created something that grows beyond me. They were interrupted by the sound of laughter near the assembly line. Two apprentices were arguing playfully over who could wire a generator faster. Arjun smiled and excused himself to check on them. He corrected their technique gently, guiding their hands instead of scolding them. The journalist watched, impressed. This is why they respect you, she said when he returned. You work beside them, not above them. I learned that from the old days, he replied. When I was desperate, I thought leadership meant ordering people around. But real leadership is sharing the weight. If I can make their lives easier, they'll give their best. The afternoon went by quickly. The reporter took her final photos, capturing the shop, the workers, and the proud sign outside, Arjun Power Solutions, bringing light to every home. When she left, she shook his hand warmly. Thank you, Mr. Arjun. Your story will inspire many. He watched her go, then turned to find Mira standing by the doorway. She carried 2 cups of tea, her sari fluttering softly in the warm breeze. She had aged a little, lines of worry turned into lines of quiet pride. I thought you might need this, she said, handing him a cup. He took it, smiling. You always know when I do. They stood together, sipping in silence as the sun began to set behind the workshop. The golden light reflected off the polished metal, painting everything in hues of amber and fire. The air smelled faintly of oil and jasmine from the small garden Mira had planted outside. Do you remember, she said softly, the night you almost gave up? He nodded. The rain, the silence. I thought it was the end. She looked around at the buzzing workshop. And now, look at this. You didn't wait for money to grow, you grew yourself. Arjun placed his hand over hers. Maybe that's what people forget. We're all waiting for luck to find us, but luck only finds those already walking. A group of children from the neighborhood ran past, chasing a ball that rolled near the gate. One of them stopped to wave at Arjun. Uncle, my school has lights now because of your machine. Arjun's heart swelled. He smiled and waved back. Study hard, little one, he called out. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the first few stars began to appear, faint but steady. The hum of generators filled the air, a low, comforting sound that seemed to echo the rhythm of his heartbeat. The lights in the nearby houses flickered on, one by one, each one a testament to his labor, his stubbornness, his faith. He turned to Mira, finishing his tea. Tell our children this, he said quietly. Luck may open a door, but only effort keeps it open. What we build with our hands lasts longer than anything fortune can give. She smiled, her eyes reflecting the orange glow of the sky. They'll know. Because they'll see it every day in you. Together, they watched the town light up, small homes glowing softly against the darkening landscape. Each spark of light carried his story, a reminder to anyone who saw it that destiny is not a matter of chance, but of choice. And in that moment, as the night settled gently over the world he had rebuilt, Arjun knew one truth that would stay with him forever. Money doesn't grow by luck. It grows when you refuse to stop planting, even when the rain never seems to end.